In-station fuel satellites? Galileo would have been impressed. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Sunmakers, written by Robert Holmes and directed by Pennant Roberts. It is also important to note that this story is the first under the new script editor, Anthony Reid, after Robert Holmes gave up the role in the last story. This one is notable for its much more lighter tone, and obviously this story has a very heavy political stance. It's about how much Robert Holmes just really hates paying his taxes, basically. Not that he hates paying his taxes, but how the powerful and the greedy use taxes just to take advantage of people. And yeah, so this four-part adventure, because Robert Holmes was script editor before, he knew about K9, and so when he was writing his script, he knew to write for K9. So K9 gets a bit to do in this story, and the Doctor lands on the planet Pluto. It was a planet back then. Now we know that it's not a planet, and that's started a controversy in the science world, but that's completely different what I know about. And we start off with the Doctor and Leela playing chess. Leela's getting help with K9, and it's a great little running joke to go from, because it's at the start, at the end of this little chess bit, and so they land on the planet Pluto. And whilst they're there, they meet a man who's about to take his own life. He's about to jump off a building. So yeah, again, like I've said in the previous story, I mean, you've got this era of the show, the start of this era of the show by Graham Williams, in which it's supposed to be a much more lighter tone. And this story has a person attempting to commit suicide. Again, there's nothing funny about suicide, but it's just amusing that a show which was trying to target, at the time, was trying to target a much more kid-friendly audience, and yet they still have some really dark subject matter like this. But luckily the Doctor and Leela stop him from doing so in one of the most charming scenes, in which the Doctor offers him a jelly baby, and it's probably the most iconic time he's done his famous quote. And whilst he's there, Leela is on the other side of the rail, and so she pushes him back off from the side of the building. And he explains that he built up his money so that he can pay a death tax. I can't remember. I think it was for somebody he knew, and he's going to pay the taxes so he can have an honourable death, an honourable burial or something. But because the taxes are getting so high, he can't pay for it. And so it was stressing him out, and so he was taking his own life. And there's a really funny line in which Leela's asking what taxes are. And the Doctor's like, they're like sacrifices, only taxes are a lot more painful. That's just such a great, iconic line. And that line alone should make this story a 10 out of 10. But let's delve right in and see what we can pick up from this story. And so the Doctor and Leela and this guy, they befriend a small group of rebels, people who don't pay their taxes, and they go up and they steal what they want and they need, and they come down and they take advantage of it. And so the Doctor teams up with them, but they don't know about the Doctor and Leela, so they're like iffy on them. So they give the Doctor a little mission to use this car that they've stolen to try and steal money for them, and so the Doctor agrees reluctantly, because they put Leela on hold. It's my belief that he did it not to save Leela, but to save everyone else from the wrath of Leela, because there are some really great moments here with Leela in which she fights off the group of these people, and she basically stands up to him, and it's like, if you don't save the doctor, then you are a coward. Is anyone coming with me? And if you're not a coward if you don't help me. So that's a really great moment there. And the doctor, like I said, he gets captured. He uses the token, and he gets locked into like an elevator, and gas comes in, and he's been sent to a rehabilitation centre, in which, and it's got some really great quirky moments in which he meets somebody there who's also ready for rehabilitation. And the doctor's just hopping around with a stray jacket, so he's constantly just like that. And you've got some really great moments in which he offers somebody like a jelly baby, and he's mucking around just using his teeth on the controls. And when somebody comes in and uses it, it electrifies them, and the doctor is able to try and sort of a plan. But however, he's captured soon after, only to be freed for some reason. And the doctor leaves some jelly babies with the other man to maybe give a signal that he was there. And so the doctor goes up to the officer of Mr. Hades, a man, basically he's like the second in command. He controls the rehabilitation, and he controls some of the taxes as well. I can't remember what the actor's name is, but I'm sure I've seen him in a few things before. It's like, he's got one of those faces. I'm sure I've seen him in other things, especially like in comedies. The guy playing him is a great comedic character, but you don't really feel threatened by him, and that's going to become a big issue with in the next few seasons, in which because of the much more lighter tone, the villains always seem to suffer, and you don't get the great urgency you would have had with the more gothic telling storylines. Not to say that this one doesn't have a terrible villain, but most things about the villains and how easily they are defeated. For example, Hades thinks that he is some sort of corporate espionage, and so what he does is he pretends to the doctor that that there was some problems and that he is actually allowed to go free, and to compensate him, he was going to give him money for it. Only to track the doctor and leave, but the doctor falls through him easy, as he sets up a device that makes it look like he's constantly just walking back and forward on a corridor, and he gives the money back to the rebels, only to find out that Leela, whilst he was gone, has gone looking for him and trying to save his life, and she gets captured, and she gets sent to a torture chamber, sort of. And it's here that we get to meet the main villain, the Collector. Just this really weird character. You know nothing about him until like the very end. And she's just such a really weird character. He's constantly slouching like this. And every time you see him like with the machine, he's literally got his nose touching everything. Like when he reads a paper, it has to be like right up to his nose. And he basically is the ruler of this place. And when Hades says that the doctor has escaped, the controller says that there is a reward for any soldier who will capture the doctor, and it'll be coming right out of Hades' personal account, which gets some really great banter. And so Hades, determined not to get the soldiers involved, because otherwise he would lose his money, so he tries to capture the doctor himself. Really fun moment. And so basically it's just a run around story. There's a lot of stuff going on. The doctor sends K9 into the air vents to try and pressure, and so he can go and save Leela. Only that he had a communication device, and the guy on the other end says that the pressure's going back up. So he calls the doctor, only to give his location away, and so there's a whole runaround in the massive city. Now let's talk about Pennant Roberts directing. He also directed The Face of Evil, if I recall. And if you remember what I said about that story, is that he's great when it comes to dark atmosphere and the more savage and the jungles and stuff. But when it came to the science fiction elements, he did kind of fall flat. And here, Pennant Roberts still has trouble directing much more light scenes. Everything just comes out really cheap, and well, a lot of it comes out as really cheap. When it's set in a dark environment, he does it very well. But when it comes into a light environment, like the corridors in which Leela and one of the persons that she's befriended in the story, when they're running around in the corridor, it looks really cheap and really inexpensive. It's also important to note there are some action scenes in this story, and they are, in my opinion, very weak. They use these card things, and the turret on it is very mobile, very unmobile, so it's just pointing straight forward. So when you see a character driving past and the villains clearly have a shot on the side or from the back, you just they could have easily captured them as well. And like I said, this is a story with K9, and you get to see the trouble that K9 as a prop comes into it, as a lot of action scenes seem very slow and very contrived just to get K9 to be a really effective weapon against the villains. Maybe he improves later, we will just have to wait and see. But for now, Pennant Roberts isn't a great director when it comes to much more light atmosphere, which this story has a much more abundance of. So back to the main thick of it. So the doctor hypnotizes one of the guards to the controller's room, and he sends out a signal that will tell people to start a rebellion. It is the end of the company. It's also important to note that they make a huge emphasis on the sons. The story is called The Sun Makers. They have a lot of mentions with this place has 7 sons or 6 sons, but not even once is there a shot of the sun. What? The story is called The Sun Makers. How do you not have a... Oh my god. How can you not have a story called The Sun Makers revolving around suns and don't even have a shot of a sun? Anyway, and the doctor notes that nobody actually knows what's happening with the company. They just seem to be making stuff, and there's a catchphrase that people in the higher ups say is praise the company. But nobody actually knows what they do. And so the doctor is trying to figure that out, and he goes into the collector's room as he's not there at the moment. When the controller finds out, he has a really hilarious hippie fit in which he takes his chair and just goes around in circles as somebody's telling him what to do. I don't know, I just found it really funny, but it's, like I said, it's just not threatening. It's nothing that will get you on the edge of your seat, apart from the fact that this character is just such a weird, just a really weird character. So, the doctor gets into his private vault, and there's a shield there, and Leela brushes in, and she collapses as she activates a self-defense system. Now, a lot of people don't know about this, but originally that was supposed to be Leela's death. This story was actually supposed to be the last Leela story. but it was changed because they didn't think it would have been appropriate for the storyline, or to have the Doctor grieve at this particular moment in the story. And I totally agree, that would have been a really stupid way to end her character. I mean, she got a really stupid ending to begin with. We get onto that when we talk about the last story, but for now, that's just really stupid. And so the Collector comes in and he's very helpless, and the Doctor takes a slight interest in how the planet works, and so he explains that he made a group with Earth. He explains his race. I can't remember, they're called the Uralians or something like that. And basically, Earth was dying, so they moved all of the people onto Mars and then taxed the hell out of them and made it up for lots of resources to do with sun making, I believe. I mean, the story is called The Sun Maker. And then Mars was basically out of everything, so they moved all the humans to Pluto, put 6 suns so that the story, so that humans can thrive on. But he also explains that this Pluto is not making a lot of profit. A lot more other planets that they have under their control, his species have under his control, do a lot less, get a lot more stuff for a lot less work, and so the plan is just to eradicate all the people on Pluto. And he has such a glee with it, and the Doctor foils him by ruining a button that he had. I really like how he presses it and the button just throws up, and Tom Baker catches it. And so the Collector then thrives back into its original form, which the Doctor describes as seaweed with eyes. And they put a plug onto his seat. He kind of shrinks and he goes into a little hole underneath the seat. And they put a plug on the seat, and the villain's defeated. And the rebellion has commenced. I've really understated the story, because half the story is about the rebellion. I only just breezed on to it because I wanted to talk about other elements. So overall, The Sunmakers is a pretty fun story. It has a lot of issues. The directing by Pennant Roberts isn't his best work. The villain is a bit too light. You don't really get that threatening towards him in terms of presence, but it has a great message. It has a great moral thing to say, and talking about taxes and how for the moment taxes are used by the rich to keep the poor poor. And it has some really funny moments, and if you think of it as a comedy, it might actually be a really great story, but it just has a few elements that lets it down. So there you go, that's The Sunmaker. So join me next time for not one but 2 stories as the Doctor and Leela and K9 go on a fishing trip. They meet a giant robot and the Doctor relives a previous adventure. So join me next time for The Fate of Krelos and Return to Telos. See you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.